this video, I'm lifting my Ford Raptor. Well, just a little bit. Now these trucks come with a 37-inch tall tire from the factory, and I wasn't really looking to increase the tire size, but I did swap out the tires and wheels. I'm running a 37 by 1250 R17 Nitto Trail Grappler, and it is mounted on a 17 by 8.5 Method 708 bead grip wheel. This wheel has 5.7 inches of back spacing and a plus 25 millimeter offset. Now when I bolted them under the truck, I loved how they looked, but to me it looked a little stuffed. I really like the offset. I feel like you don't get a lot of poke with this tire and wheel combo, but it has a little bit better stance than what it came from the factory. I simply wanted to give it a little bit more clearance in the wheel well, so that's what started this spring adventure in the first place. Now the factory Fox shocks under this truck are fantastic. They're live valve, they work really well, and I didn't want to do anything to jeopardize the suspension travel, nor did I want to get rid of those shocks. All I really wanted to do was raise the entire truck just a little bit, and to do that I ordered a set of Eibach 1.1 inch front coils and 1.5 inch rear coils. Now to get the new springs under the truck, I took my Raptor to my local off-road shop, Low Range 4x4 here in Wilmington, North Carolina. Swapping out the rear coils is an extremely easy process, but will require you loosening all 4 control arms, and it's recommended to pull the rear track bar as well. Once this is done, you can remove the lower shock bolts, drop out the factory coils, and swap in the new ones, which are not side specific. Up front, the install is definitely more involved, as you would find with most independent front suspensions. This is because you have to separate the factory coil from the live valve shocks, which will require a strut compressor. These coils are not side specific, and it is worth noting that swapping the coils does not require new upper control arms, nor did I find there was any interference between the upper arms and the new springs. It is also worth noting, to the best of my knowledge, you do not have to recalibrate the suspension, so I did not do that, and I'll talk a little bit more about ride quality differences later in the video. So how much did these springs actually raise the truck? Well, I measured before and after, and the difference up front was 1.25 inches, and kind of surprisingly, the difference in the rear was 1.25 inches. So I literally just raised the truck by 1.25 inches front and back, which to me is perfectly fine because it maintained that factory rake, which is what I was trying to accomplish. Now it is worth talking about spring rates because you are going to be changing it when you go to these Eibach coils, and there actually are 2 different variants for the rear coils, both of them being progressive, so you can get an HD set, which is really ideal if you're going to be hauling a lot of cargo in the bed. Maybe you've got a dual spare tire mount, or you've got an overland rack or some type of bed shell. So if you've always got permanent weight mounted in the back of the truck, I would recommend getting the Eibach 1.5 HD springs. I don't typically keep a lot of weight in the back, just different weight varies from depending on what I'm hauling. So I've got the standard rate coils. These are progressive just like the factory. The rate on these coils is a 125/200. Compared to the factory, that is a higher initial rate with a lower secondary rate. So factory is around 66, and I think it goes up to 228 if my research is correct. And what I will tell you how that has changed the ride quality of the truck is what it really removes is a lot of the floatiness. Now, ride quality is very subjective, but I'm not a huge fan of when the truck just feels like it's really floaty going down the road. It's more sporty, I guess is a way to say it, even though it's kind of weird to say a truck on 37s is very sporty. In terms of acceleration, to me, you have less squat when you get on the accelerator very hard, which is good when you have 700 horsepower. Overall ride quality, I like it. I think this was an improvement. I don't feel like I made the truck ride worse, which is always a big fear whenever you're changing out coils and spring rates. Hey, did I make this thing ride worse just for the effort of making it taller? No, I do not feel like I did. I'm very happy with that. In terms of off-road, you can really feel the difference, again, with that unloading and how bouncy it felt from the factory. To me, this feels a lot more controlled. Now, I don't live anywhere near the desert. I am maybe the furthest point from the desert, but there are still places that I can go take this thing and cycle the suspension and have a good time with it. And my opinion, from how this thing was stock to how it is now, I like it how it is now. I feel like it does a better job at keeping the truck settled, and it doesn't feel as bouncy to me, which is definitely an improvement. In terms of overall suspension travel, I did not detract anything. All I did is increase the up travel by 1.25 inches. That's really what it did. It did not lose any suspension travel. There's a common misconception that if you swap in these coil springs or a set of springs that you might lose travel or jeopardize the suspension. I've done none of that. This coil can completely unload. It doesn't unseat or anything like that. I have full range of motion for the suspension to up travel and down travel as it can from the factory. So there's not really a big negative in my mind of going with this setup. Really, you're just getting a bit more ground clearance, and it's allowing the truck to kind of go faster because more up travel equates to being able to hit stuff a little bit faster. These 37-inch Nittos definitely bite in. They're not an ideal sand tire, but they work so well, and this truck in 4High and Baja mode is an absolute blast. The coils do retail for $400 a pair, and they offer Gen 3, what's called standard and R specific coils. If you have an R, you can either go with a 1.1 front or you can go with a 2.5 front, with a few other options for the standard twin turbo V6. Now, when you're talking about changing the suspension and ride quality, there's one more thing I feel like it's worth talking about, and it's often overlooked regardless of what the platform is, and that is air pressure. So from the factory, these trucks come with a load range C37, and I swapped out to a load range D tire. Now, this is a more durable sidewall, but it's definitely a thicker sidewall. And when you're moving up with a higher load rating with a thicker sidewall, you have to compensate for that with air pressure. So I actually run a little bit on the low side to make this thing ride a good bit better. So I'm around 31 PSI in the front and around 28 PSI in the back. And to me, that gives me a nice even pattern. The truck rides fantastic. It grips a little bit better. If you're going to be towing, you might want to increase those numbers. And a lot of that's going to depend on how heavy your truck is and how modified it is. At the end of the day, this accomplished exactly what I wanted to do. I just wanted to raise the truck evenly, keep that factory rake, but give the tire a little bit more room to roam. The added benefit for me is it got rid of some of the floatiness in the truck. I prefer that. Ride quality is very subjective, but I think this was definitely an improvement. It's not something where I feel like, oh, I just ruined how this Raptor drives. These things are fantastic at soaking up a lot of the small imperfections in the road. It still does that just fine. A big thing to note here is, and I was researching this, trying to figure this out on my own, lifting up the front, I was a little concerned, hey, do I need a diff drop for this? Am I going to need to do anything with the tie rods, or anything going to be at too much of an angle? And I have not found that to be the case. Obviously, from the clips, you'll see I have fully dropped out the suspension quite a few times. I have not had an issue with any vibration in the front end, no weird feedback in the steering. Everything handles basically like it was from the factory, so very happy with that. Don't think I'm going to need to do a diff drop or limit straps, at least not to preserve the CV axles. Limit straps are always a good idea, period, if you're going to be really launching this truck really consistently. But overall, I don't feel like I've put this thing in any negative positions. You will see the on-road clips at the front axle shafts are turning. That's because these trucks do get the 4Auto option for the transfer case. So even though the default is two-wheel drive, they use these electronic hubs up front that engage the axle shafts automatically, which drives me crazy. I wish in two-wheel drive that was not the case, because you would really have lighter steering and less wear on those front CVs, but for whatever reason, Ford wants to go ahead and have them engaged, so it is what it is. I've never had an issue with the electronic hubs. Vacuum hubs, I remember on my Gen 1 Raptor, were a little bit of a thing. This has not been a deal at all for this 23, so overall, I think it was a step in the right direction. It did exactly what I wanted to, so I am very happy with it. If you've got any questions, just drop them right in the comments. If you want to see some stuff that I'm working on behind the scenes, you can always check me at all social media at Ollie Mansour Editor. As always, I appreciate you guys watching, and I hope to see you on the trail. Take care.